Okay, let the meeting begin at 7:03. It's not too bad. Andy isn't here tonight and asked that Fred step in for him. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and Anna, you're on the phone.
Yes, I am.
Okay, full house. That's the call to order. So let's jump into the bonding discussion and begin by asking Martha if that was addressed at the Board of Selectmen meeting last night, and if so, with what outcome?
I think that we are, I filled them in on our meeting that we had with Michael Vitelio and Barry Bernardi the other day, and we talked about the fact that, even though a bank loan is quicker, and but the interest rates will be higher, bonding will take a little longer, interest rates will be lower, and we will have approximately between $10,000 and $20,000 more in a public bond issue than we will in bank fees. But some of the things that Barry pointed out to us, we had talked about, was that we haven't had a bond in about 15 years, and we really could use a new public bond rating, which would be good for the town, just for future. But not to have bonds is, I guess, just as detrimental as not having credit, I guess, right? So we believe, and I've also spoken to Anita, Matt, Ward, and I have also swapped texts and phone calls today. But with Jude and Jim yesterday, we feel that the $4.1 million should be bonded for a 15-year bond. Interest rates are coming in at about 3.35, 3.31, and we feel the 15-year will provide us with some cost savings overall. So basically, Barry is working on the preliminary, preliminary official statement, which he will put together. Then it will go out to bond for bids, and that'll be open. I think Barry, Michael said that would be about 3 weeks, and then it would come back, and then we would open and see what we get.
Okay, so it sounds like the Board of Selectmen has made a decision, but nevertheless, I'm sure it's curious to know what the Board of Finance thinks.
Sure.
Fred, I sent around that email yesterday with some projections by Barry, and Fred was nicely enough to consolidate them into one page. Let me pass this around. Give one to Anita, please. Yeah. So let me just begin by reiterating what basically what Martha said. Several questions were raised at the last Board of Finance meeting that where the board requested answers to those questions before making a decision. And I think what I'm going to say answers those questions. In terms of the raising the money by a bond issue rather than a bank loan, the principal difference, major difference, is in the likely interest rate. Barry says that on a bond, we're likely to get an interest rate. He was thinking about 15 to 20 years. 10 years might be lower. An interest rate of 3.45 to 3.55%, depending, whereas a bank loan would likely be 5.75 to 6%, a substantial difference. He projected that if you borrowed or bonded over 20 years, $4 million, that spread in interest rates would result in a net present value of $768,000. The actual amount is over $1 million, but the present value is $768,000. And the expense, as Martha said, is more for bonds than a bank loan. but it doesn't begin to compare to the interest differential. We were on the phone yesterday with Mike Botelho, bond counsel in Barry, and they estimated a bonding aggregate cost of $60,000 to $80,000 and a bank loan of $40,000 to $50,000. So, at a potential cost differential of $20,000 to $30,000 versus the cost savings of almost $800,000 is a no-brainer. And Barry says 98% of municipal financing is with bonds rather than a bank loan. Another question that was asked had to do with redemption or to call the bonds prematurely if interest rates were to decrease and we wanted to call the bonds and reissue. Barry says that typically with the 20-year bond, you can do that at 7 years or thereafter, with a 15-year bonds at 5 years or thereafter, with no interest penalty. That's what the market expects. Now, he didn't know whether it would be legally permissible, and the law on this was all Internal Revenue Service tax law. That's what governs these bonds. He didn't know whether you could provide for an earlier call period, probably pay a higher interest rate. But for our purposes tonight, we'll leave it at that. So we don't have to stay with 15 or 20 years if interest rates were to significantly decrease. And finally, in terms of my anecdotal information, we talked about arbitrage, which is the difference between what we would pay on the bonds and what we could earn in interest on the bonds. And that arbitrage is limited by the IRS, but with exceptions that completely cover us. So the bonds that we're going to issue would be subject to no arbitrage penalty. We can borrow at 3.5% and invest at 5%. And the relevance of that, it's good news, but it also regards the timing, right? It argues for getting the bonds issued as quickly, as soon as possible, even though the payment schedule for the senior center is stretched out over 10 months-ish. Any questions on that? Or are there do you remember any other questions that you asked that we should answer? Okay. So then the two remaining questions that the Board of Selectmen dealt with last night are the amount of the bonds and the duration. And if you take a look at Fred's sheet, you'll see that the expectation is that 15-year bonds could go out at about 3.35%, whereas 20-year bonds would go out at 3.55%. I was curious about, well, how much does that factor alone cost? Just a 0.2% interest variation. And the answer with respect to the 20-year bonds is about $83,000. In other words, if you just take the fraction of 3.35 divided by 3.55 and multiply it by the total interest, you get an interest differential up to 20 years of $83,000. So that's one factor that makes the 15-year bonds less expensive. And the other factor, of course, is that you're borrowing money for a shorter time period. What's not to like? Well, what's not to like, what's the other side of the analysis is paying the bonds off more quickly results in higher annual bond payments. So if you, and forget the 10 years, we're not talking about 10 years. So if you just look at the total principal and interest payments on Fred's sheet for the 2026 fiscal year, the difference between $399 and $338 is $61,000, and then that differential continues to drop. The next year is $59,000. In 2029, it's $55,000. Down to 2035, it's $39,000. So I didn't attend the Board of Selectmen meeting last night, but my guess is that the decision of the Board of Selectmen was that it's better to save the cost than to reduce the tax burden going forward. That's my, those are my thoughts.
I guess the other consideration is kind of what Mary had talked about a number of months ago, which was the cadence of our borrowings, right? That this doesn't take into account. And so we've kind of bunched all our borrowings into a single period of 2 or 3 years for the school board. And then for the town, we've had renovation costs and that sort of thing. So I don't know that that's been accounted for, but discounting that consideration, which is a little bit qualitative but important, because then you are in the market with some consistency, and so you get a credit rating. But the 10-year is not unattractive. And when I look at the difference of the 10-year and 15-year, and I see a $400,000 difference and a $100,000 per year difference in debt service, that's palatable to me. And you're paying down the principal more quickly, and so you're creating more credit capacity if you do need it in the future a lot more quickly. So if we're going on a recommendation that only includes the 15 or the 20 year, then I would choose the 15-year, but I wouldn't discount the 10-year either. I don't want to reopen a conversation that's already been had at the Board of Selectmen. If the Board of Selectmen recommends to us either 15 or 20 years and we have to choose, then that's what's before us. But I would argue very strongly that the 10-year is attractive to me.
Yeah, and I don't want to do all the talking tonight, but the countervailing consideration is the burden on the taxpayers, from a mill rate standpoint. And just my eyeball suggests that for 2026, the differential would be $180,000, following year $170, $165, $160. So that's just the difference between the principal and I'm sorry, I'm looking at 20 years, not 15.
Right.
That would be the difference between a 20-year and a 10-year. The 15-year, yeah, 115. But again, if 20 years sort of is our benchmark as to the least impact on the taxpayers, what I said a few minutes ago, the numbers were like 60,000 and odd down between the 20-year and the 15-year. And I could see us saying, well, $60,000, as an impact on the mill rate is not substantial, but 180,000, 170,000 on the mill rate becomes significant. I'm not discounting your comments.
15,000. What's our total plan?
So 40 million.
Right. So 115 grand on a $40 million budget is a bump.
Well, suffice it to say, the only reason you wouldn't go with the 10 years is because of the additional principal and interest payments every year.
Right.
That's the only negative.
Right. And so if that makes a difference to folks, then it does.
Right.
But I would just underscore, I don't discount the 10-year option.
Fair enough.
If I can just jump in, I will tell you that we didn't consider a 10-year option today. We just looked at 15 and 20 and discussed it. But I just want to put this out there, and I talked to BJ about this a little, and Mike was setting up a meeting, but I am a little concerned about this sewer project and how that, the expectations on us, because I had a phone call from Michael Botelho. He wanted to set up a bonding meeting with me for sewer. And I was like, okay, what's going on there? And what are they looking for? There was some discussion that it's possible, we haven't clarified yet, so don't jump too soon, but that the $15 million forgivable loan needs to be bonded between the 4 beaches. And I am a little, and Michael Botelho said to me, I don't know what's going on here, but I have a lot of questions, because we have 3 private beach associations. And what are our obligations? So there are residents, but what happens if one of those quasi-government goes belly up. What's our responsibility? So we're setting up a meeting next week to discuss this with Steve Sinati, Michael Vitelio, BJ, myself. I'll invite Natalie if he wants to come. Anita will be there. But we need to get a handle on it because between the clean water funding, the $15 million forgivable loan, we haven't seen any figures as to how it's going to affect the towns, the individual townspeople that live in town yet.
Well, wouldn't that be a revenue bond, though, and not a general obligation bond like this would? Because it would be paid with the revenues generated by the users they can receive.
So if we're taking out bonds for town views, but one of those other entities, which is attached to us by revenue, goes belly up, then what's our obligation now?
Well, that's a question of who the water entity actually is. If they're asking the town to do it, again,
And I've got to figure this out because there's a lot of moving pieces in this one.
yeah. So how does that dovetail with?
I just want you to be aware of it.
Yeah, we got another one on this issue.
I just like you to have a heads up there. I'm not sure how it's going to work out, but and when Michael Vitelio tells me he's concerned, then I get concerned.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it's clear.
It's not clear to him,
No.
and I think he has much more experience in this than I have.
Yeah.
So when he says, I'm unfair, I'm not clear either.
And let me just kind of repeat what Martha said. The concern comes from uncertainty as to what the hell is going on, not because we know something is going on that is nefarious.
No.
Just don't know.
Yeah.
We just don't see. And so we're supposed to present WCCA to the Board of Selectmen on the 17th of July. And I asked for the numbers. I said, you need to provide us with numbers of how this is going to affect individual homeowners and what are our responsibilities for our 25% share. So that's just coming up with news.
So does anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, Dave sort of alluded to the school bonding and how this is kind of drops in the bucket compared to what that's going to look like. Have we gotten a clearer picture of what Region 18 is planning to do?
Right, but I don't think the order of magnitude is going to be substantially different from what we know.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, the timing is going to vary and the numbers will vary, but it's going to be a big hit the year after this coming.
Yeah, I mean, I know we had sort of looked at the scenarios that we had sort of looked at before, especially under the 10-year version, 26, 27, 28 were off.
To your question, though, and ironically and annoyingly, there was a bond meeting scheduled for a week ago tonight or a week ago last night, and Alan Shinus and I walked over to the school to attend the meeting, and nobody was there because the bond consultant had COVID. So that meeting was canceled, or I'd have something I could tell you.
Right.
I know that when we had our last community leaders, we talked about updating. They have to get the HVAC project done in a time frame to meet the grant requirement.
Right.
So that is what the biggest thing is. But as far as the Miles Creek component for the addition, they could chunk the bonding
Okay.
and not do it all
All at once. So they could bond the HVAC sooner and then the other piece of it later.
That's what was my understanding, but I'm not sure how they're doing it. It has not.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only piece that is sort of too bad we don't have that.
Well, put it this way, the preliminary statement has to be done either way, and it's going to be a few weeks before that's even finished. So we have some time to gather more information and then put in our meeting for the statement. But
Okay, so with respect to the senior center bonding, other comments, questions?
Well, we raised the issue of the potential to cover the student budget to some extent.
so we'll know more. I would encourage you to do on the license. be the presence.
And is that going to happen because I'm reading some things that people are pushing back and saying, you also in the campaign, something to mention, you could push back on the state.
Well, they have to sign, they have to get a, before you can push back on the state,
Yeah.
you have to be able to say that it's not affordable. And so the state's kind enough to give us this, sorry. My allergies are going crazy today. Maybe it's just millions of dollars on gas. But the state, go after a minute. The state's loan, I have seen no paperwork on this forgivable loan. According to Steve Tsunami, Michael Carey, our lawyer, and by the way, Steve Tsunami also, and he's been working with Rich Pendergrass for years on this, so he's got a very good draft that he has a copy of it. And I want to see it because the state sometimes makes promises and then money disappears and they can't make their full promise. And I don't want that to happen to us. So I would like to confirm the thought. So I think that's probably what we do.
But what's the chance of it being alternative to the state's mandate?
There are some very good systems, but I know that RWCA is not interested in looking at them as comments. We have a few people on the committee that are looking at them seriously, and I've been trying to provide information. I've talked to Carl Fortuna, over Staples, who's pushing back. I just want those. Where am I sending it? New Haven? He doesn't have the options. He doesn't have
I mean, they want to stop showing support the housing units and parking capacity. The big picture here has to be thought through. It seems to me that if we have a local solution, it would be a big benefit to local.
Any farms continuing to develop, they're going to be spending more in New London.
So we can have to consider funding that.
And then my meetings in New London, they'll say, well, somebody will say, well, Steve or Scott will say, well, you're not at capacity, you're not at full capacity, you can do so much more. And they were like, no, we can't, not with the way this is now. So they need to make some upgrades. Don't very questionable. But we'll get more answers as we continue this exciting research project.
And the young bonds, we're going to have very long-term bonds for the high school. Let's be carrying that.
Well, obviously we don't issue the bonds at Region 18. We just have to pay it. But my guess is it's probably a 20-year date. Do you know?
Yeah.
That's ultimately what it is. I mean, there's a series.
Right.
That's what they had projected with
Yes.
20 years ago.
Other comments, questions about the senior center bonds?
We don't have a July meeting, but we do have some special meetings coming up for going out to bid on certain things. So maybe we'll have some.
Do you want to vote tonight?
According to Michael, you don't have to vote. It's already been approved that you.
Well, the resolution that Michael drafted authorizes the Board of Selectmen and Martha to make the decisions. So we would simply be advisory. But I will ask that question, namely whether any of us disagrees with the 4.1 million 15-year decision that the Board of Selectmen made, and if enough of us disagree so that we want to communicate that to the Board of Selectmen, we can.
And by the way, we didn't vote on either. Michael said, you don't need to vote. You just need to discuss. And he said, they've approved bonding. You can just discuss your options.
So, not to be dogmatic, I would recommend, it's kind of a resolution, yes, but recommend to the selectmen that do strongly consider the 10-year option if they haven't already in further discussions prior to any vote that they take.
I don't know if it needs to be a motion or.
No, I don't think so. I think we're just providing input to the Board of Selectmen that Martha can be in the minutes or Martha can carry it back. And so one of our members thinks that, you know, a 10-year term would be better for the town.
I concur with that.
And I will share this with them because we did not have this last night. So Fred, I'll share your information now. But I think also if one of you or a couple of you would like to come to the Board of Selectmen meeting the 1st of July, that would probably be a welcome thing so that we can have a further discussion at the table.
What time is that meeting?
5:30.
Did you say July 1?
July 1, first Monday.
So a week from Monday. A week from this point.
Right.
Okay, so if we're just kind of going around the table, which I'm happy to do, we've got two folks preferring a 10-year bond.
Without preferring, just saying not to.
Like get information on it.
Well, okay, but let me pin you down, right, for the Board of Selectmen. Dave is of the view that it would be preferable. And you're, right? You think the 10-year?
Yeah, that's a clear view of mine. Others may want it for consideration.
No, I understand, but I just want to know what the thoughts of the Board of Finance are to communicate to the Board of Selectmen. And Dave thinks 10 years better. You think you're not sure, but you want 10 years to be considered?
Yes.
Okay. And do you think 20 years is too long?
Yes.
So inferentially, it's 10 or 15 years in your mind.
I agree with Fred.
Yeah, exactly. 20 is definitely too long for a $4 million bond.
Okay. Candace?
I agree with that.
10 or 15?
I say I agree that 20 is definitely too much.
Okay.
Between the 10 or 15, I would not go as strongly as David did and say I prefer the 10, but the 10 or the 15 both look like viable options.
Mm-hmm. I personally am indifferent between the 15 and the 20, completely supportive of the 15, would shy away from the 10 as creating more of a tax burden than I think is wise. Kim?
I agree with Fred that I think that the 10 years should be considered.
Or the 15?
Or the 15.
Again, rejecting the 20.
Yeah.
Anna?
I like the 15 better than the 10 just because I think that the tax burden is going to be pretty heavy over the next 5 years, and that just helps us out a little bit with that. So I would prefer the 15, but I'm not opposed to the 10.
Okay, well, I think whether it's useful or not, I don't know, but my summary of the polling is that we have one person who thinks the 10 is the best choice, several people who think 10 or 15, and a couple of us, I'll go with 15, so nobody is in support of the 20, right? So basically the Board of Finance says, you know, because you didn't consider the 10, go back and think about the 10.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it would be beneficial if we asked Ian to come and start to share some of his thoughts and his projections? Because I know he has some updates on.
Oh, you just said Ian?
Ian.
Mm-hmm.
If we need to play this, put this on. This is a big part of the puzzle. Part of the puzzle,
Right.
It's the biggest part of the puzzle.
I'm not. It's not. It doesn't jump out to me as to how the answer to the school funding is going to change the answers to this question. But I'm never against having additional information. If he has additional information, whether he comes in person or delivers it on paper, sure. Any projections he has would be welcome.
Okay.
I think their idea of funding and costs are pretty well set, is my understanding from last week's meeting. But it would be easy for us to layer in 10 years or 15 years plus whatever the school is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would be an exercise that I think is worth doing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if having Ian here is
I'll ask her.
necessary. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe Ian or somebody else thinks would be better.
Well, asking him to come might just prompt him to share more information. to get out of coming.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that was helpful, and we're all up to date. Say what?
I'm trying to say electricity.
The next item on the agenda is approval of the May 20 meeting minutes. So I'll start by entertaining motions to approve, and then we can discuss them.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay. Matt moves to accept. Kim seconds. Anna, you were too late. So any discussion, questions, corrections, comments?
I mean, just one formatting comment. I think the alternate members is supposed to be indented under the present in person up at the top, but that's
Okay.
It's formatting, yeah.
So these were distributed in advance, so we don't have to wait for people to review them, but if anybody wants another minute or two to review them, let me know. Okay, hearing no comments, take a vote. All in favor of accepting the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say what?
She said aye.
Okay. Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions other than David? Okay. Thank you. Then the next item on the agenda are the financial reports. You know, I went over them and they have just a bunch of questions, but let me let others go first. Anybody have any comments or questions? Anybody read them?
Yes.
I mean, I know you told us, but on the revenue picture, it looks like we're getting 20 million. We're getting more revenue than we anticipated.
Yeah.
That's very positive.
More revenue and less expenses, at least on a year-to-date basis. On the first page, Anita. Oh, it's just revenue.
The cover page.
It came in the mail. It says Lime Senior Center billing to date, March 24, 123, and then you multiply times 24% and get 32,000. But the 32,000 is actually 26%. And by billing to date, I assume you mean this is the reimbursement from the town of Lyme? Yeah, and they've got a 25% share, so I don't understand that line.
They had it. Certain ones, we have a number of Arkansas, there that certain ones are divided by population, others with like student population.
I think it's the building project that
The building project is 25.
Oh, okay, and then other billing was 24.
The senior center, I believe that one's the one with by population.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Cowboys Park,
Mhm.
35 ones with schools.
Does that sound familiar to you? I always thought the senior center was 75-25 across the board.
No, the first setting. And it's in the name in the book for the building. It's been there, it's been now.
Well, I'd like to see that. The construction project is not, the 25% share wasn't a new thing that was negotiated for purposes of the expansion. It was just a carry forward of the split that we have had historically. So we should confirm that percentage, but in any event, the 32,000 is 26%, not 24%.
David, a second. I can run up really good.
Well, it's not urgent, but it's only important that we get the.
I'll just probably,
Yeah, I think there's town woods and.
Well, I think the town woods is different. I think the town woods is based on a population spread like the school is.
the student population are based on the town population.
Yeah, we never, on the board, seen an operative document that. It's just kind of.
Yeah, no, I raised the town woods thing some time ago, and Anita produced a document that, that varied kind of with the population.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that's true for the senior center.
Okay. Yeah.
The senior center doesn't go by student population.
No, that looks like population.
General population.
Oh, by general population? Oh, interesting. Whatever, when you find a written document that answers the question, send me a copy of it, because I'm
Subject to renegotiation. I mean,
It's on, we have a meeting, fundraising, and after that,
Because they're like a reward.
no, we're gonna transmit to you.
Okay.
I'm going to flip through pages, but
One of the things I'm trying to say,
Yeah.
that one of the things there is too, is that we are incurring all the costs, and Anita and Tracy, for paying all this stuff. They get one bill,
Yeah.
and we're getting
All the
administrative.
administrative.
Yeah, so that was never figured in.
Yeah.
So if we could recapture some of that, I would be greatly appreciative of that.
I'm going to flip through pages, but ask you not to bother doing that. I'll try to describe what the question is. On the special revenue fund, there's something called miscellaneous revenue that had a fund balance of $853,000. What is that? What's miscellaneous?
Wait, I'm on the floor.
Huh?
I'm on the floor.
It's a special revenue fund called miscellaneous.
Yes, okay. That is, It's on the back, it's on the,
Miscellaneous revenue.
So 2,138.
miscellaneous for 2830. $8,838.
Yep. Oh, no, I've got 853,634 as the balance as of the beginning of the year, 723,000 as of April 30th.
It's on the back of the first,
What?
it's the third column on the back side of the revenue page. Yeah, I think we're all looking at the same one.
I'm looking at this.
Yeah, I'm looking at that.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this. I'm like, where's 800? Okay, the other fund. On the other funds, this one, if you look down there, it's Fund 9. Fund 9 is the one that holds the ARPA money, grant money, and all other money. So it's the miscellaneous fund.
Okay.
That was something they eliminated.
Okay.
Okay.
It's restricted money.
Okay.
Primarily.
Most of it is off of the various also there was a money that was the donation for the something like that. Like 40,000 sitting there. That the grant money that comes for the registrars is there, the grant money that comes for the town clerk, if she gets it, and then where it all gets tracked because you have to keep it separate from the reporting to the state. There's one of the program, so it's a tracking reason. So they want to see each then put it partially in. This is in there, opioids in there.
And this is
No, it's 9. 9?
9?
8, about 8, 900.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was more.
No.
Depends on
And then you have, one of them is 14, and you're about 9. It's that like if someone does a bomb, you for something. So you deposit the money in there, you hold it for them, get it back, and look at it.
So it's not just a few items.
Yes. And I had that worked down on a spreadsheet and then so everything is all on it.
So that's combined for our purposes, but
Yes.
separated software.
Yes, but it's all pretty much accountable money except for the interest. That's the school account. That's it.
Yeah.
Next, excuse me. Next question is, in emergency management, we have a current year budgeted at 285, and we've only received 51. I think there's a good answer to that. I just don't remember what it is.
That is one that we builds up for what he said. So you authorize him to spend a certain amount, but if he doesn't spend it, he can't bill it out and get reimbursed for it.
So the question is, what does he intend to buy, and why hasn't he bought it yet?
What's on the radios, and I believe that he's going to have to carry it over. That's for his radios, for emergency management, for the radios and products, and all the needs.
It's always offset by his reimbursement. Yeah. Historically.
So this is a revenue number.
Right.
Right, because that's what the radios
It's also, it should be offset.
So that's his expected reimbursement.
Is that carryover 229 emergency management communications upgrade?
That was, if you remember right, the funding, and I'm trying to remember this budget line, but originally radios were supposed to be funded out over the next 3 years, and then they decided to do away with it, so now we're expediting the rest of the radios, and that's why it can be more this year than it was originally intended. I don't know how much of it is coming out of Millstone, and we also have another smaller grant that was supposed to help it out as well.
So my sort of bottom line question is whether we would be entitled to another $233,000, but we're going to lose that because the fiscal year is going to end in 2 weeks.
That's something I can see where he stands with it and how much, but I know that he has still, he was out and he said that he is still, because if you look at his expenditure side is not matched by that. So it's appropriate to that.
So it's a reasonable question, but we know the answer.
And it could be that the camera system is up there, the radios have not come in yet, therefore they're going to build it yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll follow up with you.
Mm-hmm.
But if Dave orders radios for $50,000 and he puts in for a reimbursement, we have an invoice for the radios, so that's going to be a cost in this fiscal year. But then it submits for reimbursement, that should also be
It will be reimbursable.
for the proper accounting funds. It'll be receivable. So we book it.
Right.
We might not get the cash until we file it.
Right.
And that could be a timing thing, right?
But it will still show on your financials on, would it be instead the offset would be, it's gonna hit your revenue, but then the offset is accounts receivable.
Yeah, I don't care at all about the bookkeeping or the timing. I just don't want to lose the money.
But it will hit this side of the revenue.
Yeah.
So this is the appropriate year for the revenue.
Martha, we still have 40% of our mosquito control budget. Are we killing mosquitoes this year?
We are.
Good.
$1,200 every 2 weeks.
Very good.
Per mosquito, yeah. So I actually called because this bill, of course, did not come my way until all of a sudden April. I started getting this bill. And I was like, where's this ball letter? And come to find out, the gentleman who runs this company told me that when Bonnie took office many years ago, she canceled it because she said, well, this is ridiculous. 2 weeks later, she called, she said, yeah, I better put you back.
Yeah,
I'm He does it to all the basins, all the storm drains, drops them in, and he monitors everything down at the beach, marshland, and he sends me this future report, which I'm going to have to have him in so he can actually review it with me because I don't understand it all. But he'll tell you if it's a high concentrate, low, medium, and of each one. It's like, I think it's 40 to 45 spots just monitored. Those also get various ingredients spread to them. They're all organic, they're all safe for everything. But they do cut down on the larva and the mosquito breeds.
That's a tangible benefit.
Yeah.
Mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Who knew? I mean, we should promote that. They're providing the service.
Yeah.
During the budget season, we talked about the Rogers Lake Authority, and of course my memory is not very good, so I don't remember. The Rogers Lake launch attendant and patrol launch supervisor have an aggregate of $7,000 budgeted and zero spent. Do anybody remember?
They just got hired.
They just
started. So
Well,
pretty much these couple months.
Well, but this would be for last summer. Why didn't they do this last summer?
He didn't fill the position, somebody was getting money. No one wanted to work from home, so he asked for an increase in price.
So you think those positions were not filled last
I
summer?
believe that's part of that because I know that he said he wanted to see people are hungry at 25 because
I remember
last year they took the 15 or whatever they were paying.
I remember that. Yeah.
$15 didn't cut it.
Yeah.
But I think he had only one person, and they didn't do the whole thing. Yeah. But
And I wonder whether, our policing of Rogers Lake suffered as a result last summer. In other words, if we need that functionality and we didn't have it. Anyway.
They're marketing.
Fred, you may know something about this. Again, for Rogers Lake, there was $8,500 for water testing and nothing spent, and $14,000 for weed treatment and only 30% spent. Do you remember what's going on with?
No, not in detail.
Was the weed treatment something that mostly needed to be done in the spring? I feel like I remember that conversation.
And I think they did in the one of the meetings. And they stopped the mussels or the clams, the Asian clams. They did away with
We launched the clams, right?
I don't
Yeah.
know.
I think the clams won.
Yeah. So we're not doing that.
They're awfully
Under Parks and Rec, we had $11,000 for SV facilities. Is that Soundview facilities?
That's correct.
And most of it not spent. What were we supposed to do that we didn't do?
Yeah.
Soundview
Is
facilities.
that the porta potty? And do those get paid at the beginning of the season?
They're going to sound good, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is under Parks and Rec.
No, but you need to put bathrooms or something else.
Yeah, but that's under sound view.
That's under
Parking rec is the only thing that I remember. The parking lot attendant.
But we haven't had that in years. So we got an ask for it.
And I think that may be under policing.
Yeah, he doesn't want it on the person, but it's getting around.
And just curious, it's not a lot of money. Just didn't know what it was.
We'll check it. And we'll-
Oh, under police parking enforcement, we budgeted $94,000, and we have 64% left. What's police parking enforcement? Does that sound right?
I thought
And then there's the rank. And can you tell me what page that's on, BJ?
Yeah, 11.
One thing here. On my scale too.
I thought the Rangers came under the parking lot line.
No.
Well, the next
I mean,
line
maybe the
has
police just
Rangers
haven't been doing
overtime.
parking enforcement. Aren't they understaffed right now?
Who?
The police.
we're down more. So we just swore in a new police officer yesterday, on Monday.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if they're down, maybe they're not doing the parking enforcement.
I don't see a ranger's line item under police.
Parking enforcement,
It's right under parking.
No, isn't that overtime?
Okay.
I'm wondering if it has something to do with the passcode system and the ticketing system.
Yeah, so there's revenue associated with it.
There's a threat, because we bring money in. Oh,
But again, the curiosity is, that's a big number, 94,000. 2/3 of it wasn't spent. So it's just a question, what
well,
was we
the
supposed
bills aren't all in. It's
to? Well,
all-
that's true.
So let me talk to Matt Weber and see what that is.
And if they do the most of their parking enforcement during the summer,
All right,
they would have bills for
May and June.
May and June that are still
I don't
pending.
think it would be a lot, I think it's already overtime, but that's the Rangers. That was money for the Rangers. And the Rangers, yeah, that's the Rangers.
Well, and you do have to remember that last year, we only had 5 rangers. So we were considerably down in rangers last
I think
year.
we were looking for like 1,000.
Yeah, this year we have more, but last year was considerable. We hired like 7, 2 were fired, and then we.
So there's only one line item that's specific, and that's just overtime.
Yeah.
Right.
That's probably parking worse than above, I believe.
Yeah.
Right, for the Rangers. Not the overtime, it's just the.
Well, yeah, let's confirm that. That is parking enforcement. And it maybe would be better relabeled rangers.
Yeah. Because this seems like a redux.
Yeah.
Should we have?
I am reading a couple of counts here and there once in a while.
Yeah, for
Because it's like, I don't know.
Good, thank you. Those are the only questions I have. Anybody else have any questions on these? Okay. Next item is the suspense list. Does somebody have a
That's
suspense?
not until next month. They said, right? Suzanne said she won't have that until next month.
Oh, she moved it?
Yeah, she said it 3 times in the office.
Oh, she told me. I think it's a little early.
It's very early, later.
Yep.
Okay.
But before we go off the financial report as a line item, it was my impression from looking at these, which is 11 months, and Fred kind of alluded to the same thing, that it looks like we're doing better than budget. Now, I know a lot can happen in the last month, and there can be adjustments and so on and so forth. But do you have any sense as to whether that's true?
Currently, I think a lot is going to be based, I believe, on people coming to meetings on carriers. But that would be your call or not, but everybody carrying something over.
Well, but that's fair. In other words, if we're better than budget because we haven't done things that we're going to do, it was just timing, that doesn't help so much. If we're better than budget because stuff didn't cost as much as we thought it would, that's a good.
I think it's, a lot of things, if we see some things are under spent, some are over, maybe it's a little bit of both. But I think that I hear people that call me that, oh, I want to carry this over, because I already sent out the form to them so that if they had a heads up what the form would look like and what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So I have gotten phone calls on carryovers, and like we were talking about, date reverse was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But there were 2 other people asking for that they want to carry their money over.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we do talk to carryovers have to be for projects. They can't just be like, oh, I'm carrying my salary money over, or something like that.
There has to be some.
There has to be a reason.
Yeah.
And collections, because we use 98.5.
Yeah, we always do a little bit.
So I get 99.5, there's 300 for almost.
Oh, and you know what we did do better? I think the number was on budget 300,000 for interest and 800,000 or 900,000 actual.
Right.
Oh, just income.
Yeah, that's not bad.
And actually, if you look at the reports, because I did after speaking to Santo, the auditor we have, and Nicoletta, the auditor we're going to get, there is an adjustment. So if you see that we are within the range of where we were last year, but on the last page, if you see where it says other, there is a dollar amount in there that one number is off. That's, where it says total revenue, and if you look at the third column in, the total revenue now is 2145 to 52.
Right.
It's because the amount 673,200 got added in as a line entry, and that is to balance the budget, because that is the money that you have taken from fund balance to balance your budget to match your expenditure. So last year was never shown on this report, on the last year's numbers and this year's numbers, the revenue numbers did not match the expenditure.
So I'm confused. In other words, when we adopted a budget last year and we had the blue sheet, right?
Right.
I would have assumed that the revenue number equaled the expenditure number.
Right, because 600 from fund balance.
Correct.
Right, so this 600 here, plus the 73 is the additional money that you have provided throughout the year.
Okay.
The total amount that you would get in from fund balance. So that's why the number is 33, but it's really, if you compare apples to last year, it's really, there's more on the same track as we were last year. We're still good. We're actually ahead of where we were last year.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's why it's kind of hard to explain, but that's why I want to.
It's just not included on the monthly.
It was never included here, and it should be shown here for balancing, because when doing other reports, your revenue paperwork never balanced their expenditure.
Yeah.
So now in doing this and having the entry here, it's clear cut to the auditors to see, because they were wondering last year why are we missing $600,000 between regular expenditures. And those are, oh, that's what we mean. So that's why, right, and so that's in other places they show that the morning entry, and I did it in line if the also was in Chesapeake, Cedar, and he does show it all.
Yeah.
So
the way we show it on the budget sheet.
so yes, now we're also showing the revenue side as well.
Great. Next item is other business. Is there any? Then we'll move on to the select woman's report.
So just updates on some projects. Very road sidewalks are complete, except for some mulching around the top 3 trees. Tim will be finalizing his budget report for, of course, we are waiting for 2 bills, one from Kelowna, who did the concrete and the work, and then also for Bartlett Tree, which Tim monitors very heavily. I'm sure he's paid with his budget. So he's good. And he'll get that to us in the next few weeks. Just to bring you up to date, I started a little bit with Grafton Hill Bridge. First step is to work with Frontier to have that hole moved, because nothing can be moved forward until we get that done. I'm waiting to hear back from our representative on how we can move that process through. I did do some just quick in looking at the funding, and it looks like our funding that we have between the state grant, the special fund balance, and Public Works currently having this year another $355 for that. We have $1,675,317, and the updated estimate from the engineers in April was $1,453,800. I can send you a copy of this if you want. You don't have to write it all down. So basically, we should be good, hopefully going forward. And then we have our famous Swan Brook Cruise. So as you know, you allocated
No, I was just going to ask if you continue to go down there every morning to clean it out.
Yes, okay, sometimes. Although we'll talk about that later. But yes, my husband and I have a nightly date.
How romantic.
We haven't had to do it. We haven't had much training, but yesterday morning we have 2 gentlemen, Jeff and Steffelinger, come down, and I forgot Jeff's last name, but they are very kind, and they went down yesterday because they could see the storm drain starting to bubble up, they went down and dug it out because low tide was at 2:38, but Ed wasn't sure if he'd get there till just around then. So they said it's not going to last that long, so we'll go. But this is a huge issue in this town. And so we allocated $1,600 to put in grates and take down the east wall. So then we started thinking about it in other viewpoints and realizing that if we put the grates on the outlet now, we couldn't clean it out. So today, Keith at DOCO and Tom Macknick were meeting to discuss some grates that I had found. They were going to manufacture flat ones. I said we really need trash hauler ones so that when the water rises and all the weeds and everything are on top, we can actually go in and grab them off. If they're flat, they just lean up flat against it, and you've got to go in the water and start pulling things out. It's a mess. So Tom agreed, so did Keith. So the outlet is open because we need to be able to shovel. So I spent an hour and a half with Jeep reps down there, and they said, this is a puzzle. I said, you are so right. And they said, we love puzzles. So they're going to do some work on it. We've also gotten word that we moved forward in a grant that Jim Lampos and Katie and I put together. So we went from the preliminary phase. We were 400 applications, and we're one of the 200 that are moving forward to the second phase. So we're hoping that will bring some money for a study. So anyway, we're going to have to build the crib back. A new design, but relatively the same parameters footprint that we had before. We're going to shorten the east wall. We're going to keep the west wall where it was. We're going to put an end cap on it with a rounded corner on the inside so the water should go straight down and shoot out. That's our new idea. And I keep thinking back to your question when Jim asked for me, and he said, this is going to be it. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is not it. This is going to be about a $100,000 project, and we are going to have to go to a town meeting to get funding for it this summer. We're going to have to build it, and we're going to pray it gets in before hurricane season, and then we're going to stand there and pray that it doesn't get taken out by the hurricane. And it's going to require new piling. It's going to be stronger, but it's rebuilding both the walls and praying that it's going to hold it for long enough till we get some funding to rework the entire stormwater system down View area and along the shoreline. It's the only thing we can do. Any questions on that?
Yeah, well, with putting aside the hurricane damage, because that's kind of unknown size of the hurricane severity, blah, blah, blah. Absent a hurricane, are the engineers pretty confident that this is a quasi-permanent solution?
This new crib?
Yeah. In other words, if we spend $100,000, is it going to work?
Everything's a guess. You learn from the old design, and you try to improve it. And that's why I said, that's why I brought Jeep in. I said, look, here's my plan. Here's what the plan is. What do you think? Should I spend the money on it? But on the other hand, we have a responsibility to those people to keep them safe. We can't allow, this is just, think about it. This is just a normal day. We've had no rain since Friday night. And yesterday morning, it starts to back up. And where does it come from? There's a lot of things. There's pipes. Miami Beach has requested to clean out the brook. They've got a permit requesting into inland wetlands. They've got questions to answer. There was no one at the last inland wetlands meeting to answer the questions, so they have to come back. But they've got to regrade it. It's a mess. Trees are growing out of it. Maybe they can make it a little deeper. They've got walls that are falling into it. It's not a good situation down there. So to protect themselves, they're realizing to put some money into it. They've had work done with Connecticut Water. They also want to do some more stormwater changes. But, you find you could take a walk, and all of a sudden there's a pipe coming out of the ground into Swan Brook.
where does the pipe go? You have to start tracing back. And that's why it's a puzzle, because does it come from someone's house and they're draining their basement? Does it come from a storm drain? Who put it in? And when you stand there with 5 or 6 people down there, okay, well, where did this come from? They all go, I don't know.
So there's no, map that is kept when people put this stuff in, or they just put it in without asking the town, so we can't possibly know.
The page of the brown.
Thank you.
Yeah, but Candace is right, there should be.
Well, that would be a survey of mapping out our, some of our storm drains lead to pipes that actually take them to the brook, and then there are some just dry wells that hold.
But you can't do it today.
What?
You would have to pull a permit to any sort of drainage that goes in from an area that's not owned by yourself, and it's probably not allowable. So
Unless
all
you
this
do-
stuff
unless you
comes
do-
from like the 50s and before. And,
Well, this is a brand new pipe, so we know it wasn't done in the 50s.
oh, that's
So we have to, and there are a lot of things that have been done in the shoreline.
so
It's just that
requirements
no
are
one ever
requirements.
wants. It's been a little.
So we need like imaging equipment, like ultrasound, so
I think we have
make
to,
a map,
but
but
I asked Ed that when I first got here. I said, where's your map of all the pipes? And he looked at me and goes, I don't have a map of all the pipes. He goes, it's up here. And I said, well, that's not helping me know where the pipes are. So
I'm just wondering if you could hire somebody to do like an ultrasound.
there's got to be some imaging to do. There's got to be.
The other question I had back to the crib was my new favorite person, Damien Coppola. I don't know if he would be an expert on this, but he definitely knows about flood and erosion.
Okay, so
Who's that, Candace?
So
she met this person who was interested, and they got talking, and she realized he'd be a perfect fit for flood and erosion, and we had one opening left. So
Is it just a town resident?
he's
Yeah.
a town resident, and it's like his life work is flood and erosion.
he's written a book.
Perfect.
Loved it. So he'll be at the first meeting this week.
That's great.
So anyway,
Maybe you can start with pipes.
Well, I was just wondering if you could take a look at the crib and give an idea as to whether you think that design.
we really probably need to do something more like Sheffield Brooks project, which was 2 grants, over $1 million total, and that was years ago. It's helped. They still flood, but nowhere to the extremes that they do. We also have an issue at White Sands Beach. It's on the private part of the beach, but it comes through, again, these are residents, and it was part of the marshland restoration years ago. And Steve provided a solution, but not a total solution. And so the neighbors put a pipe in to go out to Long Island Sound, which really should have deep approval, and it didn't. And over the years, Ed has sort of helped, and then we brought in Deep to say, hey, this was your project, and this is what the end result here, since the pipes washed away in another storm. And Ed went once to help them put them back, and the second time I said, time out. We got to figure out who owns these pipes. And then I found out it wasn't Deep. But that's
So Deep owns pipe.
well, I'm not saying owns it as the design was approved.
So when Deep approves designs, do
Well,
they keep a map?
Well, this isn't pipe. These are pipes that go out into Long Island Sound, which Deep sort of has a problem with because what's going into the sound.
Yeah, you know.
So the Long Island Sound study doesn't like that either. So we have to really get together. So I had the whole crew down there one time, some of my flood and erosion control people. It's just a very thing. So they literally have a metal pipe in the sand, and then this very huge, about the size of this table where Matt and Fred and I are, like quicksand. And when their yards start to flood over on, I think it's Seaview, they literally have to go to the beach and they start to dig and it starts to bubble and then it explodes out into the sound. And it's not a pretty thing.
That doesn't sound safe.
No.
30 people.
So still Wayne's looking pretty good, right?
And waterfront property is the most expensive.
It is not a good situation. It is not. So we've got a lot. So what we'd like to do is if we get this grant, we would use it for the Sound View, Miami Beach area, and then incorporate that part of White Sands into it later. So it's an issue. All right, Chantimahaque Landing. We have voted to ask for a survey of the area. All of the maps, deeds, everything that we have were sent to the surveyor, who has a large variety of historical maps of old lines and lines and what was once Bay Brook. And they've already got a head start. I've asked for this to be completed by July 20th. I think I can I've asked for the quote. I haven't gotten that yet. They're reviewing what we've sent them, if we've sent them anything else they wanted. I'm assuming I can probably take this out of an engineering budget for next year, or I may come for a special appropriation.
I think the Hamptons are going to contribute to
Not at all. Soundview parking lot, we have until January to get this into place. Nathan Jacobson's currently putting together the bid package. Would have loved to do it myself, but I do not have the expertise to do it. So that's going to cost us about $44,000 to put the big package together. The cost expectations with the bid preparation and the afterwards to have somebody as a construction manager, probably about $50K. That will also have to go to town meeting, so I'm sort of hoping I can do that and the crib at the same time.
That would back up on that. What are you talking about with the Soundview?
The parking lot for the ADA parking lot.
This is the ADA compliance issue?
Yes.
And what are the steps in the parking lot that we have to take that are going to add up to $50,000?
Just the construction alone is going to be about 41.
But remind me, are we constructing a boardwalk or something for wheelchair?
We're literally taking a rectangle with two smaller rectangles off of it. One will be a walkway that will go to the sidewalk on Hartford Ave. The other one will be a small walkway that will go to the porta potties at Soundview.
So the two walkways.
And there'll be, and then 4 parking spaces, 3 for handicapped vehicles and 1 for a handicapped accessible van. That will be put in. And we've already had somebody worried about the parking on Line Street and why there's no curb cut. I'm not even going there. We've got an ADA consultant that we found from the state, and so she's working with Amy Benatti and the ADA team. But if they complain and we have time, a complaint, one complaint, $50,000. Okay, police contract negotiations are beginning next week. Initial proposals will be shared. Right now we have Anita and Joe Karenberg, our HR person, and myself on the team. If anyone from Board of Finance wants to sit in, you're more than welcome, but you have to be at the first meeting. Dominic and Stephen Hackett are handling negotiations for the town. We're trying to leave the lawyers out of it, except for at the final. We'll just have to make sure everything is good. And Jill's already gone through a quick review of the contract, along with myself, picked up a few proposals that we have. They don't have much that they're asking for. We haven't seen their final proposals, but just in off the record talk, you sort of know where we're going. And as you all know, it comes down to salaries and wages. Salaries and benefits. So that's where we'll be. But I know my limits. And that's, I think, about it, unless there's anything else that you're really interested in.
Martha, going back to Chantimahaque for a minute, are you postponing? So I'm just up to date as what the press has said, but your letter to them and the Framptons was unhappy with it and put something in my mind. But one of the things you said in the letter was you were going to remove the shrubs. Has that begun, or are you waiting for the survey?
Survey first.
Okay.
So we can stake out where our area is. more extensive than when you drive down there, everybody thinks it's just the road right to the end, but it's not. It goes off to the front of their property.
So that hasn't begun yet.
Trees and the gardens that are right there, right?
Yeah, I haven't been there in the last few weeks.
To the left of that, the walkway that goes down to the.
So we'll see what the experts come on and say, and then once they do, and then I will go down and tag with someone else and say, and then we'll let them know through, I'll send them a note and say we've tagged the ones that are on our property. You have a week to get rid of them, remove them, whatever you want, and if not, somebody will be here to take them out, and then we will establish new rules for the land use.
So if you drop that in Limelight, if that's the most recent public communication, I think he implied that he was going to sue federal tort with Beaver Haven, but I assume you haven't received a complaint yet.
No.
He's probably waiting to see what we actually do.
Mm-hmm. Probably. He had said this before that he was going to sue, but I haven't seen it. And we did hire our little expert again, because when Jim was doing his research for the MOU, he came upon some other information. So we sent that to the expert because Jim didn't have time to follow through on all the aspects of it. But he also is coming back with another report, which I think is favorable for us as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's Jim Lampos.
Jim did some more research when he was working with the MOU with George Benson. So
Okay.
he was doing his own research, and so we'll see what happens. I'm waiting for that expert report. I haven't seen it. So, moving along.
Public comment. I don't hear any.
Honest on sleep.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.